In today's episode, we actually did a live stream on our Facebook community, but at the same time, obviously, this was a recording for today's conversation, which was a solo episode just with me, in which we covered a weight loss study, not a weight loss study, it was a systematic review that they looked at what makes the people that lose weight and they keep it off, what makes them like, or what are some of the factors that actually were common denominators among them, and some of the things that they did to actually keep the weight off. So again, we shared 10 different factors and it was a really great conversation. But again, you're going to hear me talking about obviously live stream and our Facebook and referring back to people that were commenting on there. But it was a really great conversation and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I did recording it. And of course, if you have any questions and have anything else that you would like to share, make sure you go into the show notes so you can see obviously different ways and you can reach out to us. Enjoy this episode. We'll see you guys on the next one. Welcome back, guys, to the Nutrition Blueprint podcast. This is Coach Andres here, your host, and I'm super pumped to be here today, mostly because of the fact that I'm going to talk about the topic for today is this is a solo episode, by the way, so I don't have a guest here today. We're actually live streaming this into our private Facebook community, which, by the way, if you're listening to this podcast, not live, but actually in a car or through either our, iTunes or Google Play or Amazon Music, all those different things like that, and you're not part of our Facebook community, you need to make sure you check it out. The links, you're going to be able to find it on the show notes. Now, if you're watching this in the live stream, of course, you're already part of this group, which is awesome. And I'm happy that you are here. So I figured that the best thing, and I just want to make sure that I have the right microphone here. I just switched over, so perfect. I think this sounds a lot better. So yeah, guys. So I guess like the one of the topics that I wanted to cover here today is like it's actually a study that they did on weight loss maintenance. And the reason why, before I kind of talk more about what they found in this study, I really wanted to kind of explain that I usually tell all of our clients that losing weight is easy. And you're like, Andres, what are you talking about? That is super hard to do. That's not the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do is for you to be able to maintain what you've lost. And the reason why it's the hardest thing, and when you start to look back and you're part of this group and you struggle with that in the past and you look into the ups and downs that you've gone through, you can probably attest to that as well, because of the fact that you have gone through weight loss in the past and you've gained it back up, and when it goes down again and you gain it back up and it goes down again and you gain it back up. In fact, I have here, we bought this because we're going to do a TikTok, and it's, if you're watching this on YouTube, I have a yo-yo, which this yo-yo kind of represents like the yo-yo dieting that everybody typically experiences. So so weight loss is not the hardest thing to do, it's maintaining that really that makes a big difference. So when I hear about weight loss transformations and weight loss kind of changes that people experience, I get excited and motivated by them. But I'm more motivated and more driven by people that lost it. And when I talk to them in 2 to 3 years, they are exactly at the same point or even better than what they started. But there's actually science behind on how to do this. How do successful people that lose the weight maintain that weight loss over time without losing it? And this study, what they did is like they look at a bunch of different studies across a bunch of different people, and they try to find like common denominators that really differentiate them from people that lost the weight but gain it back up. And I have talked about things such as, for example, the Biggest Loser study, which, you know, if you guys have ever seen the show, the Biggest Loser competition was this competition ran by Jillian Michaels, which I have great, I mean, I have some thoughts about her. but it was like, they call it, I mean, I don't like to use this word, but they call it fat camp. And these people were like 300 to 400 plus pound people that were going to this competition. They were putting through like rigorous trainings for 3 to 4 hours a day, like eating 800 to 1,000 calories. So overall, not a very sustainable approach. And when they follow up with a lot of these people from, I think it was like the 2008 season, they realized that 5 years later, they gained all the weight back up and more. So what does that tell us is the fact that losing the weight is not a difficult thing when you're doing the right things and you're creating consistency around it. And of course, it depends also on where you're starting and how much weight fat you have to lose. But the most important parts of it is like what happens after you're done, right? Which is maintaining that. And I usually kind of tell this, and I use this analogy so you can kind of help you understand it. I use this analogy as a bike, right? So imagine like you're riding a bicycle. So when you're riding a bike, the first kind of like pedals that you take is harder because you need to kind of gain momentum, right? But then as soon as you gain momentum, it becomes easier. So go back to your bicycle riding days, or even if you do it right now, again, it's harder to start, but then it becomes easier as you gain momentum. That is if you're on a flat surface, right? So imagine weight loss is kind of like riding a bike on a flat surface. Now, weight loss maintenance, it's kind of like that flat surface starts to become kind of steep and it's now kind of going uphill. Now, at that point, you have to push a lot harder and it becomes more difficult and you get tired a lot easier, right? So I usually tell people like maintaining the weight or gaining muscle mass are two things that are just as hard as like riding a bicycle uphill. It's much harder to do. Now, gaining the weight back up, it's actually like riding a bicycle downhill. You don't even need to pedal for it. You don't need to do any effort and you're already kind of making it happen. So hopefully those things stick with you here in this analogy that I'm trying to do. But let's get on this study that is going to be sort of like the essence of today's podcast or today's live stream here on our Facebook community, which is the factors that determine weight loss maintenance. So let me tell you about this study real quick. Um, this is a systematic review. A systematic review is basically something that looks at different studies and they kind of pair it all together and they do some statistical analysis to find comparisons and to kind of find what's the word that I'm looking for in here? Similarities between the groups and those different things like that. And they do all kinds of different things on it. And really what they investigated was, number one, experiences, challenges, and the strategies related to long-term weight maintenance after a substantial weight loss. They look at 15 studies, and in all those 15 studies, they assess a total of 294 people who had been overweight or obese, had lost the weight, and had tried not to regain it at least for 1 year. And when I read through like the things that they found in this study, it was fascinating. And I want to make sure that you keep note of this because this is extremely, extremely important. So let's go through each one of those different factors. People that lost the weight and kept it off, the number one factor that they had was self-monitoring. So self-monitoring is simply like when you're losing weight, for example, if you attempted to do that in the past, you probably realized that you were either doing something like calorie tracking or you were using a diet or doing different things like that, but you were tracking your progress through either the scale or measurements or progress or photo progress, all those different things like that. But if you remember a time where you maybe kind of like achieve your goal, you stop doing all those different things. In fact, with clients, a lot of times, like the accountability that they have when they join our programs is usually huge because it helps them self-monitor or it helps them monitor themselves to figure out exactly where they're at. Now, if you know me by now, I'm not huge into just like looking at weight, but the key thing that a lot of these people do once they lost the weight is they kept monitoring themselves. They kept themselves in check. And they do this with using different tools such as calorie tracking apps, food diaries, food scales to make sure that they were kind of maintaining obviously portion control. Again, I'm not saying these are things you have to do, but these are people that successfully maintain their weight were able to do. They tended to weigh themselves regularly so they can figure out exactly what they were. They set eating routines and generally limited their food choices. They made plans for social events, often checking the menu in advance to decide what they would eat. So overall, they made lifestyle changes. And they were really thinking about the choices that they were making after they lost the weight. How many of you guys sometimes do a diet and usually after you're done, you're like, oh, I'm cool. I can eat whatever I want again, right? And it's usually because of the fact that you're not making the lifestyle changes that are going to help you accomplish the goal that you need to accomplish. So that's one thing. Number two factor is going to be external monitoring. So what does that mean? This is usually either facilitated by healthcare professionals like myself. So obviously like a coach, I was kind of keeping them accountable, maybe loved ones that they were just trying to kind of push them and really kind of encourage them to maintain and do different things. Or sometimes either physical or online support groups. Like if you're watching this in a live stream or Facebook, you're in one of them providing motivation, support, and accountability. And I have met a lot of people in this particular group. Again, like if you're listening to this in the live stream or my private Facebook community, we have really come across a lot of women, men and women who just by being in our group have maintained and achieved incredible changes and results. So external monitoring is extremely important too. Number three is going to be your intrinsic motivators. These are kind of the things that are coming from themselves, from your inner motivators. Maintainers were motivated by things to improve their health, fitness, and quality of life, or to prevent weight-related conditions. So they really didn't want to go back to the point where they were at some point that was painful, that was frustrating, that was just like really difficult for them. And they reported an improved self-image after weight loss, and they spoke of an identity shift to a new lifestyle. So it was not just about the number. It was just more about like how they felt at that moment, how their confidence boosted, and how they, again, didn't want to go back to what they were before because they felt so much more different at that point. So a lot of times with our clients, we try to make sure that you are self-assessing yourself and realizing that the changes that you're making beyond the number on the scale are also sometimes reflected on how you feel, the confidence that you have, and how you kind of carry yourself on a daily basis, because that is really what drives your behaviors, not the number on the scale some of the times. That's number three. Number four, extrinsic motivators, which is going to be the things that are outside of you, right? And again, it just reports in here on this on this study, some maintainers were motivated to improve their social image. Support system also gave them a sense of belonging. Here's a really good example. Like, for example, if I do CrossFit, so I go to a CrossFit gym and I want to kind of do better. I want to lift more weights. I want to do all the different things like that. So because of the fact that I just want to, I'm a competitive person too. So I like that kind of like friendly competitiveness, not sometimes that exists. So I'm always trying to kind of improve my social image. Again, I'm not saying that this is the only thing, because we don't want to just simply kind of look at social media and this is obviously how this may be portrayed. But rather it's just simply kind of like, again, a sense of belonging, because you're just like you're better. You can kind of go on walks longer. You can kind of like run, do marathons and all these different things like that together. Not just marathons. I mean, I'm talking about more like maybe like a 5K or so, but maybe you're working towards those things. So extrinsic motivators sometimes are really, really important because, again, of that sense of belonging. Number five, self-defined goals. This is one of the most important things that you have to really think about. The people that maintain weight loss, they maintained clear goals, which they continually reassessed. It's funny because every 3 to 6 months with our clients, we do a reassessment process. We ask them, where are you right now? And where do you want to go next? They say they reached their goals. We ask them, cool, congratulations. We're super happy for you. What are we doing next? So they continuously reassess the goals, because a lot of times, here's what happens to many people that want to lose weight. They think that when they get to the weight loss, that is the top of the mountain. And once they get there, they realize that it didn't really provide any fulfillment. It didn't provide anything else when they didn't really understand what would happen next. When people, and this is actually being shown also in research, Ironman athletes, people that run those like huge, crazy marathons, like they're like, 14 hours long, insane. And they have found that people that do those things sometimes experience depression after they finish it, because that was their top of the mountain. And if you don't have a clear self-defined goal of what to do after, or what does really that represents, a lot of times that we feel defeated and you're like, okay, like this didn't really feel as good as I thought it was going to feel. because again, they don't have those specific things. They described their dietary goals in terms of micronutrients or food categories. So obviously they kind of like do some kind of like number tracking in there, it sounds like. And they had gym schedules or engage in regular sports events. That's huge. When I think about my own personal journey, and I literally kind of posted about this as far as consistency is, in the past like 10 years, 8 to 10 years, I have maintained my workout schedule without barely any changes. Sometimes I go on vacation, sometimes I take weeks off and those different things like that, but it always remains consistent. And I ask you guys now, like listening to this or watching this live stream, how many times in the past like 5 years you have actually broke your consistency for months, sometimes at a time, right? So that's a huge thing that helps you really maintain regular schedules. So that's number 5. Number 6, externally defined goals. Such goals supplied by either sports events, healthcare professionals, weight loss clubs, but provided motivation, but were not really essential. So these are going to be things such as, for example, challenges that they kind of run in your gym. Perhaps like I have a client who's part of like Orange Theory Fitness, and they do sometimes like 5Ks, or like the challenge for this week is you're going to be like doing a specific amount of distance. So those kind of things are really good drivers because they really kind of push you and motivate you to do better. Like in the CrossFit communities, for example, right now there's this thing called the CrossFit Open. And the CrossFit Open is like massive competition all around the world. It's done online, and you do it in your own gym. And they do 3 workouts that they release them like over the course of 3 weeks. So of course, like that's like an externally defined goals because you want to do good in it. And there's a bit of a competitive spirit by it. And because of that, again, those are things that really kind of motivate people to really want to better themselves. So that's externally defined goals. Sometimes, for example, for us, it's going to be this week, for example, we're going to start, I think this or next week, a hydration challenge in our Facebook community. So that is a externally defined goal that maybe some of you guys watching this in the live stream would say, okay, I want to hit those goals. I want to get better at these things. So that actually makes a big difference. Number 7 is going to be enduring internal challenges. This is going to be things like time constraints. So, of course, like, you don't have enough time, lack of structure, everyday stress, emotional eating, trigger foods, life events such as pregnancy, illness, injury, death, divorce, job loss. And they simply created internal challenges that had to be endured and overcome. So, what this means is that these kind of things didn't really they affected them, but they did not let those things affect their way of them achieving their goals and continue to maintain their health as a priority. And I talked about this to a lot of our clients, which is a lot of times you cannot let those things affect your health. Like, and sometimes I have conversations like this every day where I have clients who have massive job stress, and maybe some of you guys are actually experiencing some of those different things. And when you have such a massive job stress, really what happens is a lot of times you let that take a toll on you, and that leads to emotional eating, to not necessarily paying the best attention to your food choices. You eat things out of convenience, not because you planned them. So versus obviously when you put your health first and you don't let actually your job stress actually got to get in the way, then you are putting you first, not your job. And a lot of times I say this to many people, you cannot let your job, just simply because you have a job, like actually play a toll on your health. Because at the end of the day, you can have all, like you can have, you can, I mean, you simply cannot put a price tag to, you can always get another job. You cannot regain back your health if you actually lose it. So keep that in mind. So enduring internal challenge is a huge thing. Enduring, number 8 is going to be enduring external challenges. So these are going to be things that are going to be being in obesogenic food environments. This is literally how they're reflected in the study. Unsupported peers, relationship changes, stress from work and personal life, and social events, holidays, weddings, birthday parties. And this is a pretty typical one that typically throws people off because they kind of adopt what I like to call the what the hell mentality. So for example, like they unsupported peers. So they start hanging out with crowds that just go out to eat all the time. So maybe perhaps is in the workplace and they go to happy hour. Right now with COVID, it's a little bit different, but they go to happy hour every single like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? And obviously these are your friends, but at the same time, like they eat terrible, they drink a ton of alcohol. So of course, these are not supportive peers. Maybe this is part of a new job that you just joined, and great. It's kind of improving your social life, but at the same time, it's not really supporting your goals. So the people that maintain weight loss are able to balance those different things like that. They try to surround themselves with people that have similar goals. They try to surround themselves in kind of like, food environments that are not going to be triggering for them, particularly if they have a background of eating disorders or really not a great relationship with food. And they do not let things such as relationship changes and personal and work stress actually affect the way of them doing certain things. And the last one is going to be like the social events, right? So like holidays, weddings, and birthday parties. I'm going to be honest, like throughout December, I don't always pay attention to my nutrition as much as I do, for example, right now, but I still make it a priority. I still make sure that I'm making good decisions throughout the week. And I don't let, and this, listen closely, you don't let one day define what your next week is going to be. You don't let one day turn into a week of bad eating habits, one week turn into a month, and 1 month turns into a year. That's very easy to do. And defining that line, that limitation, is extremely important. Number 9 is going to be encouraging experiences. So successful maintainer says here, reported feeling liberated, free from weight concerns. They felt like new people. They spoke of having developed new identities, transforming into people who lived healthy lives, took chances, and pursued previously daunting life opportunities. I just spoke with one of my previous clients who sent me an 8-minute voice note in her check-in response saying that her life has completely transformed. And here's the interesting thing: is she was actually here in a live stream recently that we did, because she's one of my female clients that has PCOS. And one of the bigger things that she started to adopting was just completely a massive love for herself and putting herself first. And she started practicing things such as meditation, tracking her food really, really consistently. She really focused on just being strong, being a woman that can like lift heavier weights and all the different things like that. And she stopped paying attention to the number on the scale. And she literally found a new identity in herself. And the kind of things that she said with tears in her eyes is like, I just felt like a brand new woman. And that to me is completely like, I just cannot even describe it with words, because that is what allows people to achieve sustainable changes. And the funny thing about this is that, you know how women, like they say women with PCOS really have a hard time losing weight. She stopped thinking about that. And then now she actually has been losing weight. And she's like, I wasn't even really meaning to do it. I wasn't really trying to do it. Sometimes we get so caught up in the idea that we have to drop the number that we forget why we're doing it in the first place. And encouraging experiences such as that, as like achieving that new self, like, sense of identity, are much more powerful to help you maintain what you accomplish in the process. The last one, number 10, is discouraging experiences. So many people reported an intense fear of regaining, making the journey feel like a constant battle. The process was often lonely, and as maintainers felt criticized at times for their lifestyle choices, because after the weight loss, they had to refrain from resuming their previous consumption patterns. Some of them felt deprived. So that's a big kind of factor that kind of makes a big kind of like thing here too, which is, again, it goes back to some of the bigger things I mentioned earlier, which is, again, they just didn't want to go back to the lifestyle that they had. And a lot of times this is going to be related to, like, maybe the lifestyle that they had was surrounded by a specific group of people that were not supportive of their whole goals. And now that they lost the weight, which is crazy, because some people sometimes are supportive and they're like, what an amazing thing that you did. But other people are actually kind of hating on you in some cases, because of course they didn't really think that you could do it, and you did it. And now they're in the same spot. They feel frustrated, yet it's easier for them to criticize you rather than praise you for what you accomplish. So sometimes they will criticize, and this is how it happens all the times. They criticize at times, like if they're tracking macros, or they're weighing their food, or they're really trying to ask really what's on their plate, or making substitutions in restaurants. Nobody should judge you for the choices that you're making, because those choices are yours. And that's a big thing, that a lot of times in situations like that, like when you really fall for like, criticism or things like that too, a lot of times is related because of the fact that you let yourself go. and you're just simply like, because you just don't, you feel afraid of being criticized, you're going to kind of have those different kinds of experiences. So keep those things in mind. Literally, those are the 10 things, and I'm going to repeat them again for people that just join in. Number one, 10 factors that were found to affect long-term weight loss maintenance were: one, self-monitoring; two, external monitoring; three, intrinsic, the internal motivators; four, extrinsic motivators, the thing outside of you; five, self-defined goals; six, externally defined goals; seven, enduring internal challenges; eight, enduring external challenges; nine, encouraging experiences; and 10, discouraging experiences. This study literally found that successful weight loss maintenance was defined by different studies, but most of the people sustained the weight loss more than 10% over 1 year. So again, like, this is the kind of things that people have accomplished. And not only they accomplish it, but they're able to actually maintain it over time. So for people listening in, for people watching, I'm going to obviously close up this like podcast episode or this live stream if you're watching this on Facebook with just a simple message to you guys. First, achieving the goal, it's a big part of the battle, right? It's huge. And it takes, depending on where you're starting, it may take weeks, months, years. Once you get to the goal, it definitely takes even longer than that to be able to maintain it. And you have to come to peace with that. You had to, I think if I was actually like adding a bonus like factor here, that would probably be something I guess like in common with people that can lose the weight and kept it off and keep it off. It's definitely going to be people learn to enjoy and love the process. I think that's like the most important part of all of them, because if you hate your life because you're just second guessing every decision that you make, because you're just simply like sick and tired of like, feeling the way that you feel and having the low energy and all different things like that at the expense of like doing a diet or a detox or anything that is restrictive. Yeah, those things are going to work, but are they going to work for you, and are they going to work for you the long term? Some people, some of you guys, like, and again, like, there's nothing wrong with this, because I get it, I understand the frustration, are just so much more like moved and excited about quick results because it's going to help you get there faster, but then you don't ever pay attention to the effect that they can have on you in the long term. So my message to anybody here watching this live stream or literally just listening to this in our podcast, the Nutrition Blueprint podcast, is going to be patient, to be consistent, to love the process, and love yourself as you're doing it, because it's not easy. But usually, once you get to the destination, it doesn't become any easier either. But I promise you're going to feel so much better. And I always say this, like, you didn't get to a point where you're in if you're frustrated overnight. It didn't happen overnight. It's something that probably happened over the past months, not even weeks, months and years of decision after decision that was not supportive of you and your health. So now this is my call to action to you. It's time to make a change. So with that, I finish obviously this episode. Hopefully this was helpful to all of you guys. And it was something that what's the word in here, that just was supportive to you, that really kind of helped you kind of change some different perspectives. Save this episode, or obviously kind of keep this in your in our Facebook community. If you're not part of our Facebook community, again, go down to our show notes so you can actually click here to request to join, so we can kind of get you in there, and go back every single time that you see you have self-doubt, because obviously this group and this community and all the content that we create is just so we can help support you, and we can actually help you accomplish your goals in the long term. So with that, guys, I want to thank you so much for even being here live on our live stream here on Facebook, or for actually just being a great avid listener of the Nutrition Blueprint podcast. If you guys are on Facebook right now watching this live, if you don't know what my podcast is called, is the Nutrition Blueprint podcast, and is available on Spotify. It's available on iTunes, on Amazon Music, like iCloud, a bunch of different things like that. And if you are listening to this podcast in any of our platforms, we invite you to join a private community and to kind of give us a follow there, or just join. So we would love to kind of have you in there. So with that, guys, I want to thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you guys in the next episode of the Nutrition Blueprint podcast.